In this class, we'll be seeing what is ASP.NET MVC, and I'll just give a theoretical introduction in this class. And in the following classes, I'll be doing two programs, which is mentioned in the lab record, and we'll try to wind this syllabus up. Okay, so let me just begin. I guess by now you already know what is ASP.NET, and what we are going to move on is not a new concept, but I'm going to just tell you what is MVC in brief shortly, because you all know what is MVC already. But then I'm going to just tell how ASP.NET perceives MVC, and then we are going to see some examples, and with that we'll stop for today. Okay, let me just get into what we are going to see in this presentation is the introduction to MVC, an overview of what is just MVC, not with ASP.NET. In general, what is this MVC architecture? And then what are the advantages and what are the features of this particular architecture, how it works, and how ASP.NET it works, and what is the folder structure, what is the new language we are going to learn in this class is Razor. So we are going to see what is the Razor view engine, and how do you specify a partial view, etc, etc. We are also going to see routing and all those things in theory here. In practical, we'll see on Monday. Okay, so let me just quickly go through what is MVC. By now, I guess you all know what is MVC and what is ASP.NET. Okay, this is just a line which describes what is ASP.NET. It's a development framework which is built for, which allows you to build web pages and websites with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and server-side scripting with the language of your choice. Okay, it normally supports 3 development platforms or models. Okay, but please note that so far what we've been choosing is, first class I chose MT, then I chose web forms. Okay, also you had something called MVC. There are a lot of other things, depends on the ID which you have downloaded, but basically one is web pages. Okay, web pages are not web forms. A little bit difference is there. Web forms are the one which treats everything as a input type or inside the form tag. Okay, but the web pages only takes like part of a page as a tag. Okay, but if you see whatever we create .aspx file, okay, it's called as a web form with master page, web form without master page. Okay, what does that web form mean? It means just the entire page is basically considered as a form. Okay, so whatever you do there, it's considered as part of your forms, action and attribute and stuff. Okay, so that is web pages and web forms, and then we are going to see today MVC, Model View Controller. Okay, it's a framework for using a web application using a MVC design. Okay, let's see what is MVC. In simple terms, I have put 3 things, guys. I just wanted to just read this. I've just put the summary of this entire PPT into that, but I'll go in depth of it because that's how a syllabus is put. Okay, but in simple words, what is model, what is view, what is controller? Okay, model just says what is the application's core, business logic of your application. Okay, basically what you're trying to do in your application is the logic part of it. Okay, so that logic is normally stored as model. Some people use the word called business model for this particular keyword. Okay, this thing can be represented as a business model also. Some people call it as business logic. Either way, logic, just remember or map the word called logic or applications logic, application core with the keyword called model. Okay, ignore the database example and all. I'll take it with better examples later. Second one, view. As the name goes, it only is bothered about displaying something to the user, displaying data to the user. How it displays, how it renders, it is secondary, but it is all focused on what data should be displayed to the user. View, what the user would be viewing. Okay, that is important. Second one. Third one is controller. All right, what is controller? It basically handles the input in simple terms, but then basically what we do here is controller is the one which decides which page you are visiting, from which page to which page you go. If you click on login, which page to take. If you take me to home page, if you have logged in, where to take you. Okay, and if you access a particular URL, where should I take you? All these things are taken care by controller. This is the simplest way I can tell you what is model, view and controller. Model takes care of the logic of the program. View takes care of the presentation logic. In other words, display what the user will be displaying and displaying to the user. Finally, controller will just decide how the website will be navigated through, how the sitemap would work. That's what. Okay. It also provides full control over HTML, CSS and JavaScript, without which you cannot have a proper web application. That is our target. Okay. Now, just a diagram to explain what ASP.NET MVC process model. Okay, it's not only for ASP.NET, guys. It's just MVC process model basically. All right. So when a request comes, who receives the request? Okay, it will always be controller, because model only gives if you give an input, it will give you an output. That's all. Okay, but redirecting and all will not be done by model. Okay, view only shows what data is expected of that particular page in that particular time. Okay, so when a request comes, controller is the one which takes over because it has control of the flow of the website, right? So once the controller takes it over, what's the next step? Okay, so first controller takes, it's not, there's no specific step here, but then just think controller can take two things. Controller can discuss details, or it can redirect through model or through view. Okay, so controller can talk to the model, controller can talk to the view. And when controller talks to the model, it basically tells you to update data or something. Okay, and then the logic changes. Like for example, I give 5 to generate some numbers. Next time I give 10. I'm changing the value, but the logic will be remaining as it is. Update presentation is what should I show to the user. Okay, how do I show? For example, first time I give 5 as enter, let's say Fibonacci series. Okay, I enter through the request, I get the number 5 from the user. I pass it to model. Model generates 5 Fibonacci numbers. Okay, so how do I display that? You should update the presentation and show to the user. So where will the presentation get the data? From model, because model has the logic of generating the Fibonacci series. Okay, so controller will give a request, and once the controller gets the request, it knows whom to redirect based on what data you have given. Controller will also tell the system to update the presentation using the model data which you get from model. Okay, so like that it keeps on going. That's, these three people will be working in par with each other so that they all give you proper data. Now let me go move on a little bit. Okay, it just provides an alternative, okay, to create an MVC based web application. And why is it, what are the features? But that's one first thing we need to learn, right? Why we need this. All right, so it is a lightweight, highly testable presentation framework. Okay, and it is integrated with existing ASP.NET features like master page, membership based authentication, etc., etc. Okay, it is defined in a web, this namespace is only small difference. System.web is what we've been using so far. Anymore we are going to use system.web.mvc. Okay, first let's understand what is model in depth, and then we'll move on. Okay, model are the parts of the application that implement the logic for the application's data domain. Okay, the keyword which I want you to focus here is the logic of your application. Okay, they normally what they do is retrieve, store, the CRUD operations what we wrote in one page. You remember the database object what we wrote. Okay, we wrote all the logic in one page. That becomes like the model here in a MVC idea. Okay, remember that. Let me skip all these examples. Let me just take it in real world directly. Okay, so I've just put the example. You can go through when you want to learn this. Okay, second one is view. View is something which displays the application's UI, as the name already goes. Views, it shows you what data needs to be displayed to the user. Okay, typically it is created from the model data. Please remember, it is typically created from the model's data. But then sometimes the reason why I put the word typically is not because it is not used always. The view will not be showing data from the model. Like for example, enter your username, enter your password. This is also view. Okay, how you show that login page, these are all are view. For that you need not get the model's data, but when you want to check whether the username and password is right, then you need the model's data. Right, so typically UI is created from the model data. Like for example, if username and password is right, the model says yes, and then you show the home page. Okay, like that. So anyway, I've just given another example. Let me skip that. Let me go to the third word, controller. Okay, what does controller do? Please be a little bit aware, because the remaining two is very, very simple to understand. Controller's role is a little bit more higher. Responsibilities are more. Okay, number one, they handle user interaction. They work with the model. They ultimately select a view to render that displays the UI. Okay, so please note, previous ones had only one task with them. One is view. It just displays what is, whatever it gets the data from the model, it displays that neatly according to however you have written. Model just holds the application logic for that particular program. Whatever you want to do, that logic has been held there. That's all. All right. When it moves to the last one, controller, there are three sets in one line. In one definition itself, we have given three things what is required there. Controllers normally handle user input. They work with the model for your data, as well as it ultimately selects a view to render that displays the UI, which means it basically manages everything. That's why it's called as a controller. Okay. So in an MVC application, the view only displays information. Controller handles and responds to user input and interaction. Okay. I'll skip this. Let me just move on. MVC. Okay. This pattern, why do we need this kind of a pattern? It as the name goes already, it is divided into three, right? So when you divide your work into segments, it's easier to finish huge tasks. If it's a small task, I don't require many people to support me. But when it comes to a huge task, okay, when there is a big function to be held or a big event to be held, one person handling everything might not be a good idea. It might be done, but it will not be so efficient because you'll not be focused on all. Okay, so when it gives your task divided to some people, if it is a huge task, then it can be divided and it can be easily taken care of. Divide and conquer. Okay, so the idea here is to separate the different aspects of the application: input logic, business logic, UI logic. Like that, we are dividing. Okay, please note this is another way of representing MVC. Model is also called as business logic. View is called as UI logic. Controller is called as input logic. Okay, while providing a loose coupling between these two, they are not strongly coupled. It's not like you have to go through a model to get the data, or you have to go through a view to get the model. Like that, there's no strong coupling with each other, but then they are loosely coupled and you can access them however you want. Okay, so the pattern specifies where each kind of logic should be located in the application. UI logic belongs in the view, input belongs to control, business belongs in the model. Okay, business logic. All right, please remember that. This separation, please note the last line here. It helps you to manage complexity when you build an application because it enables you to focus on one aspect of the implementation at a time. This is what I was just explaining so far. In the class, when you were there, I think I had explained this thing in Java. When you were there in Java, I given this example saying that why do we need an application framework? Why do we need a framework when we already have a working technology? Okay. I had given this example of if you wanted to put a small hole in the ground, okay, you would not bring in a JCB, okay, because the task is so small, you can do it without even bringing a sophisticated machine. So MVC is like that JCB which you bring when you have a lot of work to be done, okay, not just to remove some sand from some point of time. Okay, so it means do not use these programs to write hello world or simple programs what we're looking for. MVC normally is divided because it simplifies complicated projects. That's the reason why everybody prefers MVC, and it is the standard which is used in industry. Because industry is nobody will be sitting and doing these kind of lab record kind of programs, right? So when there is a real world application, it will be complicated. It should be, because it is real world. Okay, and there'll be a lot of components, a lot of modules. When you follow MVC, you divide your work neatly. Okay, you divide your work logically, so it is easy to give a lot of implementation and a lot of aspects to be added to that particular implementation later. Okay, this is why we follow MVC. Okay, when should I, that's what I was just explaining so far, but then let me put it in technical words. Okay, you must consider carefully whether to implement a web application by using MVC or web forms model. I've asked you guys to do all your projects using web forms model only. There is a reason, because I don't want you to get confused with ASP.NET MVC in the beginning. But let me show you one project. I think I'll try to do one shopping cart, simple shopping cart website using ASP.NET MVC, so they can understand how MVC works. Okay, that requires you to understand how CRUD works in MVC. Then I'll do that program first. Sorry, and then I'll move on to an application using MVC. But in the project, what you people are doing, do not use MVC. You can use web forms itself. Okay, but if you're already worked with it and you're confident enough, use MVC, no problem. Okay, it does not replace web forms model. Please don't think that since the industry standard is MVC, so we'll not study web forms. No, it's not like that. Okay, you can use this MVC or you can use web forms. It doesn't matter. Okay, it depends on the application which is given to you. All right, most of your applications can run without using your the MVC. Okay, because you don't have that much complicated projects. All your projects, whatever you have given title to me, can be done as a web forms model itself. If it is too complicated, then I would have suggested MVC. Okay, so if you have existing web forms based application, they can continue to work as it is as long as you want them. Okay, before you use MVC framework, you'll have to weigh the advantages of each approach. Okay, you should know what are the difference and all those things. You can go through that. Okay, but let me just continue on giving more preference to what is MVC advantage. Okay, so what are the things which ASP.NET MVC framework offers? Okay, I'll be showing almost all of these features in the programs we are about to do. Okay, but please do remember this. Number one, it makes it easier to manage complexity by dividing an application into three parts. Okay, that's the idea. Obviously, the reason why we bring three different parts is because I'm dividing my work into three so that it's easy for us to maintain, manage, and avoid complexity. Okay, first important thing. Second one, it does not use view state or server based forms. Okay, please note your web forms use view state. I think you have come across what is view state by now, and also it is all server based forms. Even if you're just printing hello world, you will have that word called run at server. So everything is managed by the server only when it comes to web forms. But MVC is for developers who want to take full control of the behavior of an application. In ASP.NET web forms, you don't have full control because the entire page requires or demands. Just open a simple web form and you see that every tag, even head tag and body tag, will have this word called run at server, which means the entire application is processed in the server side. What you get is the output of the process, which is the HTML page. But MVC will not do that. Okay, it takes care of the control. You can control which is given to the server, which is not given to the server. Okay, it uses a front controller pattern that processes web application requests through a single controller. Okay, one person or one controller will take care of all the components within that particular module. Okay, we'll see that, but then let me just quickly go through. Also, it allows you to keep a design. Okay, to do an application which will support a rich routing infrastructure. Okay, what is routing? Some people call it as routing, but normally routing means you'll write it as double O. That's why I'm writing the word routing. Okay, so routing infrastructure is what is a router? It just redirects. Okay, a router infrastructure, it supports a very rich router infrastructure. Okay, which I will explain towards the end. There is a concept called routing, which I wanted to remember. It's very important. Okay, it provides better support for test-driven development (TDD). Okay, because when we are doing application, we are not bothered about whether it is properly tested, because as long as it works for our requirement, we are okay with it because it's all practice project. But then when it comes to a real world, you'll have to undergo testing phase before you even publish a website or an app or an application, whatever it is. Okay, so it provides better support for those applications which needs to be test driven. Okay. It works well for web applications that are supported by large teams of developers and web designers who need a high degree of control over the application's behavior. Okay, just think about this, guys. There are some people, I have seen some people who are really good in design. Okay, if you tell them to use design a web page, they'll design it like very neatly and very professionally they'll design. But logic wise, they are not so good, which means when they run the program, how to work it, and how that output will be displayed, all those things might be a little bit difficult for those people who are very good in creative designing. But when it comes to developers, there are some people who are very poor in developing, very poor in designing, but they are very good in logic. Okay, so how will I make this team work for me? I'll take all the designers and put them in the view team or UI logic team, and the developers, the logic people, in model team. Okay, and it gives you a high degree of control because you take the best out of the people what they are good at. All right, so that is also good. So it works well for web applications that are supported by a large team of developers, not just you and your friend. Two people means you don't require MVC there. All right, you can just use web forms and you can do it because it's a simple application. All right, so when it is a complicated application, when a team of people are working on the same project, it gives you a higher degree of control. Okay, separation of tasks. That's what I think, that's the major point we are repeating again. Okay, separation of application tasks like input, business and UI, testability, test driven development, all these things becomes a very important thing. And all core contracts in MVC framework are interface based. Okay, I hope that word is clear to you. Interface based. Okay, which means I can reuse it, number one. Number two is that I need not be able to show my code or share my code with you, the logic with you, rather only the working of it can be taken care. Okay, so they can be used with simulated objects that imitate the behavior of the actual objects in the application. That is also possible when it comes to MVC. Okay, so you can test the application without having to run the controllers in an ASP.NET process, which makes unit testing fast and flexible. This is all idea about TDD, test driven development. Okay, you can use any unit testing framework that is compatible with the .NET framework. Need not use their inbuilt one. You can use anything. Okay, and it's not something which is new and should be added to your project. It is already an extensible and pluggable framework, which means imagine there is a project which you have already completed successfully. Okay, without using MVC. But now anymore, whatever module you are adding to that project, you want to use MVC, yeah, you can use it. You can use a combination of MVC as well as web forms in the same project. Okay, so they can be easily replaced or customized. That's one important thing here. Okay, you can plug in your own view engine. Please note, this is what we are going to see extensively. There are two view engines available by default inside ASP.NET, but you can create your own view engine, URL routing policy, action method, parameter serialization. These are all extra things. I'll tell you what these mean as we do the program. Okay, so remember that. And it also supports the use of dependency injection and inversion of control. Those who have studied the Spring or struts, okay, any of these frameworks should be able to understand these two keywords. Okay, dependency injection and inversion of control, IOC. Okay, these are all features which are offered by higher frameworks. Okay, so that's ASP.NET MVC. This makes testing easier. Okay, that's the idea, ultimate target here. Okay, it's a powerful URL mapping component that allows you to build applications that have comprehensible and searchable URL. I'll give you an example in the slide itself today, but remember this, your URLs. Okay, sometimes the URLs, Google's URLs are the best to understand. Okay, if you search a Google URL, you'll see that almost everything required for the application would be already there in the URL. It will be so neat, you will not be able to find out what technology they have used, but rather you will get the input and the output easily through that. Okay, so the URLs which you have there also are searchable, which means that's why when you search something using Google's search engine, the robot which crawls for the search engine optimization also looks into your URLs, okay, and your metadata. So if your URLs are searchable, your application becomes more visible for the user who is searching for your website. Okay, so this URL mapping component allows you to build applications that have comprehensible searchable URL, and they do not have to include file name extensions and are designed to support URL naming patterns. Okay, now before I proceed further, those who have already worked with Django, I think you all would have worked with Django because I think it was there in your syllabus. So in Django you have MVC. Okay, it's not optional there, it is compulsory. Right, so because Django is a framework and you are using it to develop a web application, and in Django you see there will be a separate file called urls.py, okay, in which you will have to mention who is the one where the routing goes. Okay, there is a file which tells you which file to access. If you call this pattern in URL, which file should be actually called? How do you pass parameter to that particular thing? All those things are done already in Django. If you remember the project structure there, this will be easier here because idea is still the same. Only thing is technology is different. That's all. Okay, so support URL naming patterns, and these patterns work well for search engine optimization and REST addressing. Okay, that's the thing which I wanted to take from here is if you do a proper website using ASP.NET MVC, it becomes comprehensible. It's easy for you to search. Okay, so it is optimized for search engine results. Okay, those things are advantages of MVC. And also moving on, you have a support for using the existing markup. Okay, whatever you have already written as ASPX can be reused here. You can also create your own controls called user controls, and also you can use the idea of a master page in this. Okay, that's also possible as a view engine or view template. Please note that is just possible, that's all. You can use existing ASP.NET features. That's why we learn ASP.NET with web forms first, then we come to MVC. Okay, you can use already what you have there with an inline expression, all these things, whatever you have studied there in ASP.NET can be imported or used here in ASP.NET MVC also. Okay, it allows you to use whatever is there in ASP.NET web application. That's what I mentioned there. Let me move on. Okay, so let's just quickly go through how it works. What is MVC? Okay, step 1, request goes to your web application. Okay, when your web application is there, who takes the request? Controller. So the first step is incoming request to your application is routed to the controller. Okay, that routing we'll see a little bit detail later, but remember the keyword, the incoming request is routed to a controller. Okay, that's the first step. Step number 2. Okay, the controller processes that request and creates a presentation model or chooses an existing presentation model. So for example, I give a request for login. Okay, that's my request. So what will the controller do? Controller will go through all the models available and pull a model which will show me the login page to the user. So I'll show a login model. Okay, the logic of the login model will be called. So it creates a presentation model, and that model is passed to the view. So if I call login model, login view should be shown to me. So a view is model is passed to the view, and that is shown to the user. And step 4, view transforms that model into an appropriate output format. If you have already logged in, should take you to the home page. If you have not logged in, you should show me the login page, username, password, etc. Okay, that is required there. View transforms model into appropriate output format. Step 5, response is rendered. Okay, then you get the output. That's all. All right, please remember this. I'll repeat it again. Step 1, request is routed to the controller. Step 2, the controller processes that request and creates a presentation model. Third step, model is passed to the view. Fourth step, view transforms that model into an appropriate output format. Okay, and that 5, response is rendered to the user. That's it. Okay, that is MVC's working. All right, now moving on to ASP.NET Web Application. As I was saying, moving on to MVC application here in ASP.NET. Okay, so when in Visual Studio, when you create an MVC project, this is the typical folder structure. In recent Visual Studio, it might be a little bit different, but it looks, the idea is still the same. Okay, so a typical ASP.NET Web application should have this folder content. Okay, so let's start with the first one, models. There is a folder called models. There's a folder called controllers. There's a folder called views. It keeps it that simple. Okay, it just creates 3 different folders for all these things and keeps it there. Okay, apart from that, there is one more, app underscore data. I hope you guys by now will understand what that app underscore data is helpful for. Okay, it keeps all database or data related stuff. Okay, storage of collection of data can be stored in app underscore data folder. Okay, the content folder, what you see there, normally holds your CSS files, your JavaScript files, okay, jQuery files, all those things will be added to that particular folder called contents. Okay, scripts normally typically expects you to put only JavaScript there. Okay, but you can keep it however you want. The content can also hold images. All right, so I leave it, we'll see when it comes, but remember this. And also these folders where you have, okay, controllers is where you put the classes that will handle the request. Models is where you put the classes that deal with data. View is where you put the UI template files. Scripts is where you put your JavaScripts and .js files and stuff. Content is where you put CSS and image files. And app data is where you put data-based files or data files. Okay, this is an MVC application. We'll see that in working on Monday. We'll just go through this quickly. Okay, now here on forward. Okay, this slide onwards, we are going to get introduced into a new language, not a very new language to you, but typically a new way of writing a language called ASP.NET Razor Markup. Okay, so far what we've been writing is ASP.NET. You write C# code, okay, but you won't write it in the ASPX file. You normally write .aspx separately, you put .aspx.cs separately. But when it comes to Razor in ASP.NET MVC, we write this within, okay, within the ASPX file itself. We don't create a separate C# file, but we can have a C# file separately, which will be translated later. Okay, let me just give you a simple example. I think I think I can take Django as an example in which you write some expression language kind of thing inside the view. Okay, in the HTML part, what you write, you can also manipulate it. Okay, you write it inside a template and you write a little bit of Python code inside that HTML. Okay, that's where Razor comes into picture. Okay, I hope you would have done this. So let me move on. Razor is a markup syntax that lets you to embed server-based code into web pages. Okay, please note again, we are not learning a new language. Language is still Visual Basic or C# only. No difference. But then it is a markup syntax that allows you to add server-based code. Okay, so what is a syntax in PHP which allows you to add server-based code? Less than $PHP, greater than. So what does that line indicate? It just tells where the PHP code starts and where it ends. Okay, you would have learned that in PHP, if you are writing less than $PHP and not writing HTML at all, you need not even close the tag. Question mark greater than is not required. Okay, in PHP recent versions, I hope you have seen that. Okay, but anyway, here it is a little bit different, but it is more sophisticated than any other markup you have come across so far. All right, server-based code can create dynamic web content on the fly. We know that already while a web page is written to the browser. When a web page is called, the server will execute the server-based code before it returns. This also you know. By running that on the server, the code can perform complex tasks like accessing database. The only reason we use, most of the time we use server-side technology for database handling. Okay, but anyway, Razor is based on ASP.NET and is designed for creating web applications. Okay, and it has the power of traditional ASP.NET markup, but it is easier to use and easier to learn. If you remember JSP, less than percentage, percentage greater than, we used to write this syntax. Okay, that is to indicate that whatever I write inside that is going to be converted, or should be considered as Java. Here we are going to use Razor syntax to explain that whatever I'm going to write inside is going to be considered as C#. Okay, that's all. Let me move on. Let me just show you a syntax. It is very similar to PHP and classic ASP. Okay, I'll just put the code. Just look at that, guys. You should be able to follow. All right, please note UL, the first tag what you see here, that is HTML. Okay, this is HTML, UL/UL, unordered list. And inside that, I would like to print, you can see the output here, I equal to 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. All right, please note this is C#. So I'm going to write at in front. Wherever you see that at, it just indicates to the system that it begins with C#. Whatever I write after this at is going to be considered as C# code. So till here it is C# code. Please note for int I equal to 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus, bracket. And then you write a HTML code. The moment you write HTML code, system automatically closes the Razor syntax here, and now it thinks whatever you write here is HTML. Okay, and then again I proceed with writing at. When I write at and then write a value, it automatically understands this is the value. I need not close it specifically. I can just write wherever I want. So where this line what you see here is a for loop, and this line what you see here will be the value of I printed from this particular loop. Okay, this is might be confusing right now just for a minute, but once I finish the syntax it will be easier for you. Just remember that wherever your system throws an error that I can't understand what you've written, put at in front of it, which means whatever you write following that is considered as C#, not as HTML. So you can merge HTML and C# into one page using Razor syntax. Remember that. It also supports VB. Okay. Now, rules of the syntax when you write. You can enclose these codes inside a bracket. Start with the symbol called at and put them inside a bracket. You can also write inline expression in one line. You can write it as part of the program itself by just putting at in front of it. Okay, you can use it for variables, functions, etc. Okay, please remember that. And code statements end with semicolon because whatever you write inside Razor is basically C# code. Okay, so it should end with semicolon. Variables are normally declared with the keyword called var in this context. We do not specify a particular data type, rather we just use the word called var. Okay, strings are enclosed inside quotation marks. This rule will never change. Okay, and C# code is very, very case sensitive. It doesn't mean that if you're writing it in ASP.NET MVC, case sensitivity goes off. It is still C# only. Okay, and they have the file extension of .cshtml. Okay, please remember, basically how we have been learning so far is default.aspx will also have default.aspx.cs. But when it comes to view here in ASP.NET MVC, the file extension is going to be .cshtml. There is not going to be a second file because C# code and HTML code will be written in the same file. So you look at the file extension, you should be able to understand that it is .cshtml. Okay. What about VB? If you use the code as VB, it will be VB.VBHTML. All right. Remember that. Look at this code, guys. Okay, just look at this code and try to understand how Razor syntax works. All right, the first two lines. First line is a comment, by the way. That's a HTML comment. Okay, less than exclamation hyphen hyphen single statement block. HTML comment I've written. Below that, I've written a C# code. Okay, the green one is a C# code there. Just look at that. At and flower brackets. Whatever you write inside this engulfs and makes it as a code block. It's written as a C# Razor code block because I put at and within brackets I've written var my message is equal to hello world semicolon because it's a C# code. Okay, so that is one line of code. The next line what you see, the third line what you see is a HTML comment. The fourth line what you see, paragraph tag, it's HTML. Paragraph, the value of my message is. And here I want to just print the variable's value. All right, so that's an inline expression. You see, don't no brackets around it, just at, and then I put my message. And then I continue with HTML code. Then you have multi-statement block, and you write at within brackets. You see that a lot of C# code is written inside this. Okay, greeting, welcome to our site. Weekday is equal to datetime.now.day of week, and greeting message is greeting, welcome to our site. Here it is what weekday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever it is. Okay, and then the greeting is, please note, this is a block of code which is generated, and output is printed using single line, or in other words, inline razor syntax. So I hope you got the two types of syntax. One is code block syntax. The other one is inline. Okay, at and within flower brackets, if you write something, that is considered as a code block, a razor code block. Okay, the next one, what you see is an inline message or inline razor syntax. Okay, I hope this is clear. All right, let me move on. How does it work? Okay, razor is a simple programming syntax for embedding server-side code into web pages. And it is based on ASP.NET Framework, the part of .NET Framework that's specifically designed for creating web applications. Okay, it gives you all the power of ASP.NET, but it is using a simplified syntax that is easier to learn even if you are a beginner, and makes you more productive when you are an expert. This is the idea of using razor. Okay, it can be described as HTML pages with two types of content. One, HTML content and razor code. Please note, whenever they use the word razor, do not think that's a new language. Rather, language is still C# only. Razor code is whatever is engulfed inside that at flower bracket or at inline expression. All right, that's all. And when the server reads this page, it runs the razor code first, not HTML. Please note, this code, when it goes to the server first parses or reads all the C# code, in other words, razor code first, before it sends the HTML page to the browser. The code that is executed on the server can perform tasks that cannot be done on the browser. For example, accessing a database. Okay. It can also create dynamic HTML content on the fly before it is sent to the browser. Just like how we have worked with PHP or Python when it comes to web development, JSP also, same idea. Okay, but a little bit more efficient and faster compared to these technologies. Okay, seen from the browser's point of view, HTML is generated by the server code is no different than the static HTML, because browser doesn't care whether you use C# or PHP or Perl or whatever you are using, as long as I get the output. So that's the browser's point of view. Okay, they have the syntax and special file extension called .cshtml or .vbhtml. Razor using C#, Razor using VB. Alright, so the programming language involved here is C# and VB only. The syntax by which you write your C# code is called as razor syntax. Okay, remember that. Alright, how do you work with objects? Let me just show you an example. Date is example, a typical object which is built inside ASP.NET. It can also be self-defined or a web page or a text box or a file or a database record, etc. Okay, they can have methods that they can perform. It can have a save, it can have a rotate, it can have a send. Like there are a lot of objects might have a lot of methods that I hope all of you know. They also have properties. This is object-oriented programming, which you already know. I'm not going to take much time about it. Okay, so this date object here in C# in .NET, we have a specific property called now, which is written as date.now or datetime.now, something like that. Okay, so how to access that in your razor syntax? Just look at the code here. Okay, it's very simple, right? It's simple HTML, just regular HTML. Wherever you want C# to be brought in, you can just write at datetime.now.day. You can access it directly using that at symbol in front. Now you are just assuming that this is going to be your razor syntax, but you see that inside what I've written is basically C# code. Okay, let me move on. How do you write if-else condition using razor syntax? Let's see the example. Okay, I've just given an example, guys. Just look at that. Okay, at and then within brackets we have put some code. So whatever I've written inside that, that syntax, razor syntax, why is it called as razor syntax? Because you have at and a flower bracket. Inside that you see var txt is equal to semicolon. This is C# code. If datetime.now.r is greater than 12, text is equal to good evening. Else text is good morning. Okay, so you see that code what I've written inside is basically C#. Alright, now since that block is written there, alright, by the time when you parse this, there will be a variable created called txt. Now inside that you have HTML body and the paragraph tag, the message is, I put at and I print the value of txt, By the time this program is running, this value would have been calculated and I would get the answer based on the time. Okay, that's it. This is if else. That's also inside the block of Razor. Okay, so what about variables? Variables, same rules, guys. No difference as a different programming language. It's the same idea. Okay, it can be specific type and it store integers, string, data types, date, whatever you want. Okay, you will use the word var here to avoid confusion. Okay, you will use the word var, or you can also tell the type. Okay, but ASP.NET can usually determine data types automatically. All right, please remember in PHP, okay, you don't have to create a variable. That's just like Python. Python, you don't have to type a data type and then write. But JSP demands you to write a data type like int or string or boolean or character, whatever it is. Okay, but when it comes to ASP.NET, it can work either way. If you create a variable name, it will pick up a variable name. If you don't give a variable name, it will automatically take up assign values like how Python and PHP does. Okay, so it can do both. ASP.NET can do both. So here in Razor syntax, they prefer or recommend you to use var. Okay, look at that. These two are same, guys. Just look at that. Okay, these both are same. Okay, so you have var greeting equal to welcome to Aloysius, var counter is equal to 103, var today is equal to date time dot today. But when you see the data types, instead of writing these three, the first three, how would you write it in writing with data types? You have to write string greeting equal to double quotes welcome to Aloysius. Okay, if you put a number, you should create int counter is equal to. Alright, when you put date time space an object of that, you see date time dot today. This is the actual thing, but it will be stored as a date time object. Alright, but doesn't matter. You need not bother about this if you just use the word var. So it's not a problem. I think we already started using it in our link and entity framework. I'm just giving you a new introduction into it because here it is more commonly used. Okay, remember that. And then next one is loops. Alright, so Razor loops and arrays. You see, if you need to run the same statement repeatedly, you know I guess by now you know what's a loop, so I'm not going to explain that. Let me just show you how to use it in Razor. Okay, it's not big difference, guys. You just need to print wherever you see. C# is a little bit more smarter. You need not open and close a tag. You can directly print with @ Okay, if it finds a HTML, it will print as it is. If it finds that there is C# involved, it will automatically change. Okay, in the context of that program. So that's what I showed in the beginning. So let me just quickly go through that. Okay, so for each loop also is possible like this. Okay, in one line we have written @for each, and then we say var x in request.server variables. That server variables will return a lot of properties about that particular request. Okay, so all those things I have printed using a list. You just try this in your system when you have time. Okay, it's the same syntax. That's the for each syntax. Moving on, while same. Okay, but please note this entire thing is written inside a code block. If you find that was confusing in some manner, please use the code block. It's easier, right? And please note inside the code block, the one which is highlighted in blue are HTML, not C#. They are HTML. Okay, so how do I, should I stop my program? Normally I would write like that, right? I'll say less than question mark PHP, then I'll stop it. Then I'll write it HTML. Then I'll put it into again less than question mark PHP. It is not required here in Razor because it understands it automatically. So look at that code till I plus equal to 1 semicolon. It is C# code. And then you are printing paragraph tag line. Then you again use the word @I. It got printed. Then you start typing HTML. So I need not stop my block. Alright, I can write HTML code within the code block also easily without any issues. This is also possible using Razor. That's the idea of Razor. Okay, so basically what we have been seeing is Razor or ASP.NET MVC gives you more control over HTML. There is no code behind because everything is written in the same page. There is no separation of concern. Sorry, there is separation of concern. There is no separation of the page itself into two, but rather concerns are separated and it is very easy to test. You have URL routing. There are no postbacks and then there is no view state. Okay, so let me just go into ASP.NET model. I've already told what it does. Okay, so it is compatible with any data access technology model. All right, all EDMX, DBML file, all those things what was created in our previous projects for link to SQL as well as entity framework will now go inside models folder. Earlier we just write it wherever we want, but here it will go into the models folder. Okay, so basically look at this. How would I write the same code in in Java? I would have written it as course ID, get course ID, set course ID. Two methods would have been created. Here, you remember that I gave this idea of prop. Okay, it's a property created without even we writing much lines of code. In one line, it's getters and setters are already assigned and it's ready. Okay, this is model. This is an example of a model. Okay, now comes the very important thing what we have already discussed with Razor, view engine. Okay, what is called a view engine? There are two types of view engine here in ASP.NET MVC. By default, what you can use. Okay, so they are responsible for rendering the HTML page from your views to the browser. The view engine template will have different syntax for implementation. Right now, we will have two inbuilt. That's all I'm going to discuss. Other things I'm not going to discuss about it. Okay, there are two things. Razor syntax, the most opted view engine. Second one is ASPX legacy. You know what's legacy, right? It's not new, which is old. Okay, it's right from the beginning. ASPX is available. So the Razor syntax, which is somewhat recent, and it is the mostly opted view engine. The other one is ASPX, the legacy view engine. Okay, remember that. So let's compare both of them. Why we need ASPX and where we need Razor. Razor uses @ symbol. ASPX uses less than %, % greater than. Okay, this is something which we had already discussed. Razor uses @ symbol. ASPX, what we had written, uses less than %, % greater than. Okay, Razor view engine was launched with MVC 3 onwards, and it is the default view engine from MVC 3 onwards. Okay, but ASPX view is there from the beginning, MVC 1, 2 and on. Alright, but right now you have both. You have choice of choosing any syntax you want. Okay, please remember the syntax as well as the file extension. ASPX file extension is .aspx, and you'll have one more file called .aspx.cs. But when it comes to Razor view engine, you'll have only one file. File name will be .cshtml. Okay, that's what is the next point. Okay, so C#, CSHTML, and in ASPX you have ASPX, ASCX or .master. Like that, you have different types of file extensions. Okay, for achieving similar functionality, Razor requires less number of code keystrokes compared to ASPX. Okay, Razor makes your program look much simpler compared to ASPX. Alright, and Razor is very clean and easy to understand or easy to learn than ASPX view engine. It supports very much supports test-driven development, and the namespace is system.web.razor, and for ASPX it is system.web.mbc.webform. Okay, and Razor is little bit slower than ASPX view engine, little bit, because it has to find out what do you call innovatively, it has to find out where the HTML starts and where it ends, right? But in ASPX or PHP, what we have written, we know where it starts and where we know where it ends. But when it comes to Razor, it is more proactive. It automatically understands where that HTML starts and where C# ends, etc. Okay. Based on the votes or the popularity of which view engine we are using, okay, majority will choose Razor view engine than ASPX. But some people will use both. Depends on their function. Okay, but please note majority prefer using Razor view engine. All right. So most of the controller action will return a view, because when I request a page, let's say for example I access login.php or home.php, or basically when you're going and typing google.com on the URL, basically you're trying to return, you want to see something on the page. All controllers will normally return a view only. You have to show something. What view is returned depends on the model. Okay, remember that. The path to the view is inferred from the name of the controller and the name of the controller's action. I'll give you examples. Okay, this is absolute path. Views/controller, whatever name you have the controller, and then controller action.cshtml. Okay, moving on. A view is a standard XHTML document that can contain scripts. And scripts delimiters are less than %, greater than, or at in Razor view engine. Okay, how do you pass data to a view? There are three ways. Just have a glance, guys. To the view, how do you pass data to a view? Three ways are there. Number one, with view data. We have used this already in ASP.NET. View data of name equal to value. strongly typed view data dot model is equal to whatever model you have chosen. Last one is view bag. Please note, view bag is something which is like an anonymous object. You can put whatever you want, you can take whatever you want from there. Whatever you put only you can take, but then it is called as a view bag. It's a bag of data from the view. You just put a you put for the dot message what I have written there is not an inbuilt method. You can put whatever you want as the name, and you can put it as whatever value you want. When you retrieve, you should use the same key and then take it out. That's it. Okay, now before I move on to this slide, please understand in simple words, I can just tell you what is a partial view. This is a keyword, guys. What is a partial view? To non-technical answer would be, it's like master page. Okay, do you know what's a master page by now? I hope you all know what is a master page by now. Okay, in ASPX web forms. In ASP.NET MVC, partial views are the ones which represent a master page. What is the use of a master page? We had put header data and footer data in that master page, and we used every web form with that master page so that we get the same data in all pages, only the content will be changing. Partial view is something like that. It is used for code reusability. Okay, it's a user control in ASP.NET and it is used for code reusability. It helps you to reduce code duplication. Okay, and partial views are reusable views like header and footer views. I'll show you with example shortly, but then remember, partial view in Razor will also have CS/HTML extension. Okay, in ASPX, partial view would have .asx because you are creating a separate control, but some places we will use it as .master. Okay, here, please remember this last line what is mentioned. The best way to create a partial view is with the name preceded by an underscore. When you see an underscore in front of the name, you should understand that it is a partial view in ASP.NET MVC. It specifies that it is reusable. All right, rendering a partial view. So it is derived from user control. Okay, and it is all rendered in MVC 3 onwards. Okay, it's there in Razor. Okay, just look at this. I just write at html.partial, you can call partial. So for example, if you wanted to add only Facebook comments in a particular place, you can just add comments in that particular place. It will be included from some place. Okay, just like how your master page works. It will be, code will be written somewhere, but when you run, all will become one and return to you or display to you. Okay. So when you render partial, please note, when you render partial page, which means it takes data from some other page and displays in the current page. That's what how a master page works for us. Remember that. Okay, so I'll skip this because I'll show it in working better. Okay, so look at this code, guys. Just look at the code. I'll explain that in working shortly. Okay, so this is a small Razor based code. Okay, I don't want you to go through the entire code. Just look at the if else condition. That's all. Okay, if request dot is authenticated. Okay, please note it says if request dot is authenticated, do this block of code, else do this block of code. Let's see the else part first, but first understand what is if condition. If the request is authenticated, what if it is not authentic? What do you mean by request and what is authenticated? Whether you have logged in or not. If your request is not authenticated, you will go to the else part. Look at what is written in the else part. Unordered list, two list items are there. One says register, other one says login. Okay, I'll ignore these parts right now. I'll come back to that. I'll just say, in other words, I wanted to show a hyperlink in HTML called as register and another one called as login. So if you have not logged in, I'm supposed to show you two hyperlinks called register and login. What if you have already logged in? You should say hello. Okay, whoever is logged in, user identity name. Okay, and I'll also should give you another option called log off. Okay, please note, ignore all these things, other things which are remaining. Just understand this. You have just written if request dot is authenticated, show hello the username, and then show log off as a small link. Okay, a hyperlink is there, but then this will be the form. So I'll be showing username hello, whatever user has logged in, and then log off. But imagine if he is not logged in, I'll go to the else part in which I'll be showing you two links called register and login. That's all. Okay, let me just show you. This is already, by the way, why I'm using this code is because this code is already written in your, if you choose an ASP.NET MVC project in Visual Studio right now, you'll get this automatically. That's why I'm just using this code. I've not typed this code. It automatically comes when you create a project using ASP.NET MVC. Okay, moving on. Just look at this output. where do you find the partial view? On the topmost, you see here you have register and login. Two buttons have been showed. Okay, this is an old template, but idea is still the same. The new template will be a little bit different in color. Idea is the logic is still the same. You have two things here, register and login. Here you see hello, whoever is logged in, log off. Okay, two choices, same place. This is called as a partial view. Okay, and it is repeated in every page. You need not bother about writing it in every page and checking whether it is working, whether it is logged in or not. Okay, any page you go, like how we have Google. All right, so I logged into my Google account. When I open Gmail, I see my name there. When I open YouTube, I see my name there. When I open Google Drive, okay, or Google Forms, whatever it is, I open that, and on the top, on the right hand side, on the top, I see my profile picture, who is logged in. Okay, that is a partial view. That is repeated in different websites, but the code what is written for that is same. Okay, that's it. Okay, a little bit more about controller, and I'll quickly go through this. Okay, so each browser request is mapped to a particular controller. Okay, so if you are entering this in the URL, please note localhost is whatever website you are hosting it, and product/index/3. Okay, this is what you are entering. Okay, in this case, a controller named product controller is called. All right, in product controller, this product controller is responsible for generating the response to the browser. Okay, so this product controller will call its view. Okay, a view or a model which will retrieve index to the user, and specifically the third article, or probably a third product, or whatever it is, whatever you are doing, a third product can be shown, okay, or the third review can be shown, whatever it is. Okay, so that is passed through this URL as a logic. But by the way, I'm not sitting and writing this code, but it is going to be like that. So the first thing what you will be informing is call which controller. Then remaining all are depends on that controller's methods, what and all are available inside that controller. So after the website is done, instead of calling the project name, because project name will become your website name, right? So here you will be calling with the controller's name. So controller onwards, from the controller, you will be invoking whatever is officially required. Okay, look at this. What is controller? It is just basically a class. Controller is a class. Model is a class. Okay, view also can be considered as a class if you are using ASPX. Okay, but anyway, look at this. Public class, whatever name you want to keep. Please remember, the word controller cannot be removed from the name. Only the front word what you're writing can be changed. You can change it. It's not recommended to remove that word controller. Just like I had told you about servlets, I recommend that you keep the word servlet as it is. In front of that, you tell what that servlet is doing. So here, home controller, this colon means extends. Home controller extends from the controller class. Okay, and you see there are two methods here. One is action result. Please note both are returning action result. Okay, what is the name? One is index, one is about. In index, when you call, I put something inside the view bag and then say return that view as the action result. So when I call index of my particular home, okay, what I'll be displayed in the user, I'll use a view to display this message, welcome to ASP.NET MVC. Okay, and it goes on like this. So what is the work of a controller? Public method of the controller class cannot be overloaded, and it cannot be a static method. It returns action result. You've already seen the output. Okay, the code I've already shown you. Look at that. These methods cannot be overloaded. You cannot use different constructors. Okay, it cannot be a static method. It must return an action result. Okay, so do not forget about that way in which how the controller methods are going to be returned. It should be always public, because anybody can access the request, right? The URL should be accessible. Okay, and controller action responds to a browser's request. It inherits from the base called action result class. Different result types are expected. Maybe sometimes it will be calling the model, sometimes it might call the view. Okay, but how either way, it has to render some output to the user. Please remember that. Okay, so remember that return view without a fail. What are the types which you can return? Please note, action result is returned, but I'm just going to go through what and all are there in action result type. First is view result, which we already saw. Okay, second one is JSON result. Third is JavaScript result. Not just a view, it can also be JSON, it can be JavaScript, it can be content, it can be file, it can be a file stream, it can be a file path. Okay, it can be all these things, result types. Okay, I'll not bother about it much. Let me move on. Okay, there are important methods there. View. It creates a view result object and renders a view to the response. Redirect takes your redirect result object and takes you to a specific URL. Redirect to action takes you to another action within that particular controller itself. Okay, and the base classes, I have already told all these keywords: JSON, JavaScript, content, whatever you get, how do you process it, how it will be returned. All returned objects are basically objects. In other words, one is JSON result object, JavaScript result object, content result object, file content result object. Okay, so when you pass an object should have properties and methods, and using that you can manipulate the result. Okay, how do you pass a parameter to a controller? In order to pass, we just simply add the method name in the controller, something like this. Okay, so public action result index is the file name. Okay, what I'll be calling. So if my controller name is product, I'll say product slash index. Basically call a method which is there inside this through your controller. Okay, and here I'm saying encode that message and then display it. So return the view by putting this message past s, whatever you have typed, convert that into proper HTML code and then send it to the user. That we display to the user. Okay. Now I can just call it. How do I call that? In the previous code, I had kept viewBag.message. So how do I call it in my CS_HTML? Okay, just put HTML code wherever you want that message to be printed. Less than, sorry, you put your h2 tag and then call at, and then call viewBag.message. Okay, you can also pass some parameters to that. Okay. Now, why do I focus, or why do I discuss about routing and taking to a particular page, going through a particular controller, all those things so importantly? Let's see what is routing. Normally, we are used to traditional web applications where we put the URL and we go to a physical file, like for example, Digiworld, okay, or a particular news article. You see that the website will take you to a specific file, let's say news.aspx, where user ID or news ID equal to 1. By the way, most of you would have accessed Digiworld website. That's done in ASP.NET. Check the file extension. You would find that it is some name .aspx where news ID has been passed. Okay, and that is done there. So when you get the, you basically call a physical file. There'll be a file called display.aspx. We are calling that file, which is stored in the directory, and then we are passing a parameter to that particular file. Okay, that is why when you are developing e-commerce websites, you see something like this. File name will be shown to the user. File extension also will be shown to the user. Okay, so this is self-explanatory. We need not explain how this works and all. By now you should have understood it. So why should I use routing? Okay, so I'll just give you the example instead of showing this code. Okay, so this is how our program will look like if you use typical way of writing. So electronics.aspx, where all category based on 8. Okay, so basically we are looking for a subcategory called MP3 players, and then we are keeping that. Okay, so I'll be passing this ID. This is how all articles in Digiworld has been displayed to you with the news article. Every article has a unique ID, and we are showing, or we are seeing that particular ID, but the file name is same, display.aspx. Okay, so now we have solved the problem efficiently by just putting that ID on the top. But please note, if you have hundreds of products to sell, okay, you will have a lot of articles like this. And looking at this article, this URL, you have seen that, right? If I pass you a news article using Digiworld's website, you see that if I take that, just the URL, not getting any suggestions from anybody, just looking at the URL, you will not be able to understand what that news is all about. You will have to open the page, or I have to copy paste it in WhatsApp, wait for some time, then send it to somebody, then I'll see the heading at least, what that news is all about. By looking at this URLs, what you see here, you will not be able to deduce or understand what category am I talking about, what electronics are you opening, or what news article are you going to open. You will not be able to understand that by just looking at this URL, which means this is not search engine friendly. Okay, so they're perfect, they're syntactically correct, but then none of these would matter because we are more likely to remember words than numbers. Okay, so all the URLs what you see there is same for the user. Not the normal user will not remember what it is happening as. Okay, so instead of that, if I kept like this, okay, instead of that, if you just kept it like this, electronics/products/mp3, this is more clearer than understanding electronics.aspx where category is equal to 8. Okay, because your system will understand that, but the user will not be understanding what that URL means. Okay, so here this makes more sense. This URL is little bit more understandable, also searchable, and I can easily understand what I'm looking for in that URL. Okay, so it seems self-explanatory and the user can easily guess. Okay, these types of URLs are called hackable URLs, and it is one of the advantages of using routing. Why? Because by looking at this, you will not know which file I called, whether I called electronics.aspx or products.aspx or cd.aspx. You do not know, because I'm routing this URL to a physical file in my code, not using to the user. The user will see this URL very simple, but when I call this URL, it will actually take me to a specific file in my server, just like how we have seen in Django urls.py. Alright, so if this URL is accessed, which method to be called, which physical file has to be called, all those things can be given to me. Okay, this gives you an idea about routing. So let me just say, routing will decouple the request handler from the URL's request. So what you are accessing on the URL might not be the actual file which you are accessing. It's just a name by which you get idea. Okay, so routing is very important in MVC because we don't have physical files to handle the different requests, unlike a traditional web application. Okay, it's a mechanism in MVC that decides which action method of a controller class to execute. And without routing, there is no way an action method can be mapped to a request. Okay, it's part of the MVC architecture, so it supports routing by default. Alright, so this is the diagram, guys. This is very important for you the theory purposes. Okay, just look at that. This is called as request processing pipeline. Okay, so when a request comes, it goes to routing first, not controller. Please note that one big question there. Okay, when the request is given from the browser, first it goes to the routing of your the routing code what we have written, just like how it goes to urls.py in Django. Okay, so from routing, it takes you to the controller, appropriate controller, because if I have 2-3 controllers in my project, I can take you to the correct controller which you're looking for. All right, and what will the controller give? Controller will give a view result, return a particular view. So take that controller will look for that particular view engine and render the view based on the model or whatever it is, and then you get the response. This process is called request processing pipeline. Okay, so please remember that, and remember this the working of your routing. This is called as request processing pipeline. You will have to explain this, guys. So go through this and write a good answer for this particular question regarding request processing pipeline. Okay, I have not given much explanation. I've already told you, please use those and write your explanation. Okay, what is a route? It defines a URL pattern and a handler to use if the request matches the pattern. Okay, unlike the traditional web application, you need not map anything, because if you call the file, I'll get the file. That's all, very simple. But here, the URL what you're calling will not be the actual physical file which is getting called. Okay, remember that. And this is a simple idea, or this is a simple code. You need not explain or this one in the exam, but then just look at that code, guys. It's a simple method called register routes. Okay, it ignores a few things. Then you see the map route method. Routes.map_route, name is default, URL is controller/action/specific ID. Okay, so I've just marked what these things are. This is the URL pattern, your controller name / what action you want to perform in the controller / if you have a specific ID. Okay, what are the other things? Route name is default. So if you just call your project name /default, this will be called. All right, and what am I going to show? Okay, first I'm going to open the controller, then the action, then the ID. Okay, let me show you an example for that when we do this. Okay, so there are, I've just explained that code, guys, just go through it. Okay, and all are placeholders here. Wherever you see that brackets, okay, those brackets, what you see here are placeholder. Where you see the word controller, you'll get the controller's name. Action, you'll get the action's name. ID, the actual ID. These are just placeholders and /. So localhost : whatever name / controller / action / ID. Like how we saw product / index / 3. Same idea. Okay, what is the controller's name here? Controller's name by default is home. What is the by default action? Index. By default ID is optional. It's not compulsory for you to pass the ID. Okay, so that's it. Let me skip this. Okay, so just go through that. Just look at this, guys. Okay, so this is what I said, 3 things. Home / index / 3. In that one, controller is home. Action in the controller is index. ID is, if at all it is there, it is 3. Okay. Second one, controller is home, action is index. Third one, you see, I put the same answer. The reason is, if you don't call anything specifically, by default, index method only will be called. Index action only will be called. Okay, please remember that. What is the use? I have already explained that, but let me just go through one thing. It's very important to understand that it will enhance. It will easily create a search engine optimized URL. Alright, it is used in routing when you are not restricted to fixed URL. We can easily refactor that URL so that you can easily discover by the search engine. It doesn't include only URL optimization. URL optimization is part of search engine optimization. It's not just URL, it's also depend on the meta tag what you pass, but URL optimization is a part of SEO. Okay. One more big advantage is that, already told that. Okay, let me go to the next concept, scaffolding. Okay, I guess by now you guys know what's the meaning of the word scaffolding. I'll not tell it here in database related one. Okay, this is a very powerful feature which is available in ASP.NET called scaffolding. Okay, but let's understand what is a scaffold. Okay, I guess most of you would have seen this kind of a thing, structure when you build a house. Okay, this is called a scaffolding, what they have put in front of the building. It's not the actual building, but this makes you it makes your construction of the current building much easier, which means you already have a structure which can reach till that particular point. Okay, that's called scaffolding. So what does scaffolding do in ASP.NET? It's a technique supported by MVC in which the programmer may write a specification that describes how the application database may be used. Okay, even though I'm going through the scaffolding idea, I will not take this till the last class of our class, guys. I will be taking it only towards the end because scaffolding will make your work much easier without writing much lines of code. Okay, because scaffold is something which is already there. All right, it will create a CRUD operation within a second because it's a template. It has already a template. Okay, it will build a more powerful application. Okay, so scaffolding can generate the code which you need for create, read, update, and delete CRUD operation in an application. It can examine the type definition. You need not write a single line of code if you are using scaffolding, but you can get CRUD operations within a fraction of a second here in ASP.NET MVC specifically. Okay, it knows how to name controllers, how to name views, what code should write, where all you should put. All these things will be done automatically by scaffolding. Later, if you want to modify something, then you have to use your own code. But basic CRUD operation, what we have been doing so far is standard. Okay, retrieving, inserting, updating, deleting records from the database is standard and everybody should know it. Okay, so when you come to MVC, that becomes like part of your project. It's not, which means you, without knowing CRUD, you will not come to ASP.NET MVC. That's the idea. That's why they generated instead of you sitting and writing the code for you. Okay. So like everything else in MVC framework, if you don't like whatever they are doing, you have the option of taking that code, what is already generated, modifying it and making it with your own custom code. Okay. And also there is something called NuGet. I don't know how many of you have come across this platform. I think most of you would have used pip in Python, pip. Okay, by installing a lot of packages into your Python framework by using pip install. Okay, just like that in .NET, you can use NuGet to install a lot of packages which are not by default available from Visual Studio. Okay, if time permits, I'll show you that also. You can get a lot of scaffolding templates from online. Okay, if you really don't like the scaffolding behavior, you can write it from the scratch. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do first. Then let's use scaffolding. Okay, it's not required to build an application, but it can help you save time when you make use of it. If your target is just CRUD, you can use it without any problem. Okay, it cannot build an entire application. Please remember that it is just generating CRUD code for you. Okay, instead of that, scaffolding will help you to release the developer from the boring work of creating files in the right location. If you get the structure idea properly, then remaining you can do it on your own. That's all. And also from writing the entire application by hand. Okay, that's what is expected in college, but in real world, no. You can generate these codes and start working without even writing much lines of code. But you can get the logic only if you customize it. Okay, remember that. You can tweak and edit the output of the scaffolding to make your application on your own. Okay, it runs only when you tell it to run. So you need not worry about a code generator overriding whatever you have written. The change is what you have made it to the output files. Okay, there are a lot of scaffolding templates available from MVC 4 onwards. We are in the latest version, so it doesn't matter. Okay, the scaffolding template you select should just say how far the scaffolding will go with code generation. All right, not everything can be done using scaffold. For example, what if I would like to create a shopping cart? It is not possible to do a shopping cart with scaffolding, but you can do the admin part of that products using scaffolding. Like for example, adding, editing, deleting a product, that can be done using scaffolding, but not the cart itself, because that requires your logic to be created. That's not a commonly available logic, right? This is a commonly available logic: adding, editing, deleting records. Okay, so for what we have seen is, these are the keywords what we have seen. What is MVC? We have to see what is MVC and web forms. Okay, what is ASP.NET MVC in general? What is Razor? What is partial view? What is routing? What is scaffolding? I hope you guys will go through this when you have time. This is for the theory purposes. Monday's class onwards, we'll be taking it towards programs only. Our theory part is all done, guys. I think all 5 units theory I have completed. Okay, so for the lab list, we need to Monday and Tuesday we'll be trying to finish the last 2 programs in the lab list. Once that is done, I expect you guys to do it on your own. Keep the lab record ready, because you might be asked to bring a printout of that and then get it signed and then bind it, and all those things will be there. So the program list what I've given is final. All right, so I think 10 or 11 programs are there. Out of this, I think already all programs have completed except the last 2 programs which requires MVC. Remaining everything I've done, guys. Please do go through and try to do it on your own in your laptop and keep it ready. Okay, so Monday's class, I'll be doing an MVC CRUD. Okay, and then if time permits in that class, I'll start with the shopping cart application also. All right, so guys, go through this and come for the next class. In the next class, I'll start with the practical of MVC, and with that, we'll finish our syllabus. Okay, so with this, I'll stop for today, guys. If you have any questions, please do ask. Otherwise, please do hold on while I mark your attendance.